the stream. Just give me another solid. All right, just count to 5 in your head and kick it off.
Okay. It looks like we're on. Okay, let me hit record and then we will get started. Oh, George, can you start the recording? I don't think I have.
Yep, I've got it. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Welcome everyone to the Kubernetes community call, the weekly call. I am Swarna Padilla from Avi Networks. I'll be moderating the call. This is my first time, so please be nice to me and be kind. As general logistics, this call is being recorded. We will be posting this on YouTube channel, so please be aware of that before you speak or say anything. We do have a packed agenda as always. So let me just go through the first thing. Jace, thank you again for being the kind note taker. So the Hasura guys, Tanmai, why don't you go ahead and kick it up?
All right. Hi everyone. Glad to be here and super happy to be talking about Hasura today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a bunch of slides and I'm going to have. Sorry.
Michael, can you mute, please?
Oh yeah. Well, it's different based on operating systems. Sometimes it's that, sometimes it's Y.
Focus on the call. Those who are not talking, if you could please be kind and mute yourself.
I think the moderator is going to have to mute them.
Okay.
We're also not recording.
I think you could continue.
All right. Okay.
It's a very strange logo you have.
Yes. So the word Asura is kind of like a Sanskritized root for demon. Asura is demon, and I think demons used to refer to background jobs and processes, kind of like server-side jobs. So that's kind of where we came up with Asura. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this, and I've structured this as a set of slides and a demo screencast. I'm going to keep it quick and short, and then whatever questions you guys have. So can everybody see my screen clearly?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, cool. So the Hasura is a platform which kind of falls into the category of products that today are called BaaS products and BaaS products. So BaaS is a backend service. I'm sure you guys all know what a BaaS is. Backend as a service is a kind of tool that is becoming increasingly popular with developers, with app developers who are developing web, mobile, or IoT kind of apps to get instant APIs out of their systems, right? So Parse, Firebase are two notable examples. And so the idea behind a BaaS is that you get instant APIs for doing your database work, your authentication work, like everything from social login to username, password, email verification, stuff like that. You know, you have APIs for file storage, which are ready to be used directly with your client-side apps. And then you have notifications APIs for email, SMS, push. So this is a very typical kind of set of APIs to have. So one set of tools that the Hasura platform provides to a developer is these kind of instant APIs to get started with development quickly. And the other set of tooling that Hasura provides is PaaS tooling, which kind of gives you a Heroku-like Git push to deploy feature. It gives you a managed Postgres, and it gives you an API gateway with SSL running on it too. So I'm just going to show you kind of what a Hasura cluster looks like. So Hasura is basically a set of services that is running on a Kubernetes cluster. So I have a Kubernetes cluster. This is currently on Azure. I think it's just a single node cluster. I'm just going to check what this is. Yeah, so this is just a single node kind of Kubernetes cluster that's running 1.6 Kubernetes, and it's running on CoreOS. So on this, if I look at this, the key namespace that we work in is the namespace Hasura, which has all the utilities installed. So I'm just going to do a list of services. So you can see that there are a bunch of different services running. Like I said, there are a bunch of BaaS services like the authentication service, the data service, a proxy to the Kubernetes service itself and Postgres, etc. The important one is the API gateway, which is the one that has an external IP. So the way Hasura works is that you have this API gateway, which is the single external IP that your domain will point to. So you'll have mywebsite.com or myapp.com kind of pointing to that domain, the gateway IP, and that internally we kind of proxy to everybody else, right? So for example, in this case, if I just open up Chrome, if I go to data.appreciatively12.hasura.io, so that is kind of pointing to the data service. So by default, we have subdomains which kind of point to internal services or Kubernetes services that are created, right? This is a wrong URL, but this response is coming from the data service. So that's kind of what the Hasura platform looks like. There are two stateful services here. So Postgres is a stateful service and Redis is a stateful service. So both of these have persistent volumes. On the single node trial projects, we just use host path, but on GKE and on multi-node projects, we use persistent volumes. And Postgres uses persistent volumes. So I can, if you guys want to see that, I can do describe deployment on Postgres. So that's the only stateful services. Everything else is stateless. I'll jump into a demo to quickly show you guys kind of a few features, and then we can break into questions. So the first feature that I'd like to show you is how you can kind of write your own code, and then you just do a git push, and kind of everything gets deployed for you. Your code goes online. You get a subdomain on your main domain. You get SL generation. You get stuff like that. So I have a node service that's sitting inside this, right? And so the important thing here is a Docker file. So everything just needs to have a Docker file. The Docker file is what is used to create to run a build on the cluster itself. So I'm just going to make a quick change to my source code. So I'm going to say this is a Node.js application. So I'm going to say hello JS, and then I'm going to commit this. And then I do a git push. So I've already configured a remote. So the remote also points to the Kubernetes cluster, which is appreciatively 12.hasura.io. And then I just do a git push on that. And as soon as I do this, you can see that it runs the Docker build, and then after running the Docker build, it actually just updates the Kubernetes deployment. It updates the Kubernetes deployment with the image with the commit tag, and the image that is built itself has the git commit tag, and then it kind of rolls that out. So if I head to app dot, you'll see that it says allocated. So the SL certificate, etc., gets generated automatically too. So the way this works internally is internally we have I think the word is operator. So we have an operator that's kind of sitting there and kind of managing everything and making sure that whenever a change is made, whenever a new domain is added, the subdomain gets exposed on the API gateway, right? So just to show you guys what that looks like as well, the entire Hasura platform, or the set of services that we have, are powered by one config map, right? So there's one config map called Hasura project conf, right? And I'm just going to get this in JSON. Just a second. Cool. So if I get the project conf and I key into something called data.project, as you can see this entire JSON that's just dumped out. I'm going to format that again. So that's kind of the configuration of the entire of this entire Hasura platform, right? So everything from your like Twilio keys to your Spark Post keys for email verification to your client ID, client secret, etc. Client secret goes into a separate secret, but the config map kind of contains the different routes, everything, right? So, for example, the way this app, the app subdomain points to the Kubernetes app service is actually just a configuration here, right? And in fact, I can go edit that. So actually, before I edit this, what I'll do is I'm just gonna watch on all of the pods, so that so these are kind of the pods that are running right now. And as soon as I edit it, all of the pods that are kind of dependent on this will restart. So let me. Right. So this is where I have app. I'm going to rename app to my app, right? And as soon as I kind of restart this, all the dependent services will restart. So let's encrypt agent for generating SL certificates, the gateway, uh, which has the nginx.conf, which kind of has the subdomain mapping. All of these guys will restart with a new configuration. And now if I have head to kind of my app, this it goes live here, right? So an app is changed to the domain is changed to my app. So the way that works is because the relevant kind of deployments are restarted, because as soon as I make a change to config map, that the operator is listening to these changes, and the operator itself is what we call root. So that's an operator, it doesn't expose any APIs, it just sits in the background and listens to the right config map and the right secrets to do stuff. So that's a simple example of the way you kind of do deployment. The other thing that we also do is we just to show you guys the data APIs portion. This is not very relevant to Kubernetes, but just to show you how the data APIs work. There's another service that is a UI. So there's a UI on this entire Hasura cluster, and this UI lets you do things like create tables. So here, for example, I've already created a table, and this table has 4 rows. It's a simple user table. It's actually created tables on Postgres. So this is just a PHP my admin kind of interface on top. So I have these rows that are there inside the Postgres table. And what I can do is I can make API queries directly in kind of JSON, which is the BAS portion of this of the platform. So I have a simple curl query here. So the curl query is going to the data microservice and making a query to select from the user table where the age is less than 40. So if I execute that, you'll kind of get a JSON response for doing this. So this query semantics, it's a little reminiscent of the MongoDB query syntax. So you can do nested selects, which will automatically resolve onto joins in Postgres. You can update, insert, delete, all of the typical stuff that you'd expect, and a bunch of auth APIs. But I won't go into too much detail. I think that's it for my basic demo. And if you guys have questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Right on time. I think there was one question on
the chat.
Are you providing Postgres redundancy at all?
Can I see the questions as well?
Yes, Josh posted the question to everyone. He said he asked, "Are you providing Postgres redundancy at all?"
Not yet, but it's in the pipeline. There's not too much work that we have to do to make that happen. We just have to use kind of bunch of community tooling to make that happen. So what we have right now is kind of like a master slave configuration that you can switch on with Postgres. But the good news is that there's also just stock Postgres. So the Postgres doesn't even need to run on this cluster. The Postgres can actually run. You can point it to an RDS Postgres. You can point it to a Postgres that's kind of provided outside as well.
Thank you very much, Tanmay, for the demo and question, answering the questions as well. Just a reminder for everyone else before we proceed to the next line item in the agenda today. Can you please mute your line if you're not talking or if you're not presenting, because there's a lot of disturbance. I see. I don't want to call names out, but I do see Jay McLeod. I think is driving. So if you can mute the line, that would help us with the quality of the recording as well. Moving on to the next line item in the agenda, or before we go to that, the release updates, Jace, if I can give Lucas a quick 10 minutes, because he also has a quick demo to show us, and then he can give the release update for cluster, then we can move to the other release updates. Lucas, are you ready?
Yeah, I am. Let me see if I can share my screen.
Perfect. You have about 10 minutes to give the demo and the update if you can do that.
Yeah. Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, so my demo is about Kubeadm upgrades, and one of the primary tasks for 1.8 and SIG Cluster Lifecycle has been to design a Kubeadm upgrade command, and just to get going, I'm gonna initialize a cluster on 1.7, and it just initializes normally.
Your display is not working, right?
We can only see the left half of your screen.
Can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, now Kubeadm 1.7 is initializing, and this is like a normal user would do. And then we're gonna see that there's one Kubeadm upgrade plan command, which will show the user which versions can I upgrade to. And then we have an Kubeadm upgrade apply command to actually upgrade the cluster. So first I have to initialize a pod network as well. In this case we, and this is here we have the join command as well. If I wanted to add a new node to the cluster, and then I can check get pods all namespaces. See if yeah. So weave has initialized. Then I'll just so this is on a what a user would do. They just run Kubeadm upgrade plan, and it will check that the cluster is healthy. It will check for in-cluster configuration. We basically store just a small amount of configuration inside the cluster that is Kubeadm specific, and it can be so Kubeadm upgrade knows how to. There we go, Kubeadm config view. So Kubeadm upgrade can know what options should I use in upgrading the cluster. And here it says that 1.7.4 is the latest version, and I can just go ahead and create my cluster with Kubeadm upgrade apply 1.7.4. Of course, 1.8 as well when that comes out. And it asks me, do I really want to do this? Yes. And it will take a minute or less. And yeah, should hopefully just work. So this is one of the bigger features of 1.8. We had an upgrade method from 1.6 to 1.7 as well in alpha, but this is greatly enhanced and provides much better user experience. So it will go ahead and upgrade the API server first. Now it has upgraded that one. Then it upgraded the control manager and the scheduler and applied the new kubedns and kubeproxy add-ons. And just to prove that it's working, I now execute kubectl version, and now the server version is 1.7.4, although it was 1.7.0 before. So my cluster was upgraded with little to no effort. That's my really quick demo before I proceed to the normal SIG update. Any questions? Try to do this as fast as possible because we have a packed agenda today.
I only see rock on comments on the comments, and I think everyone is happy. So I don't see any questions. So thank you very much, Lucas. Great job. So if you could, while you're still on the line, just if you could give us a quick update on the cluster lifecycle state, then we can move on to the release updates with Rodriguez and.
Yeah, sure. So one major feature of 1.8 is self-hosting. We have now self-hosting support, and it will be enabled by default in 1.9, not 1.8. But in 1.8 it will be behind a feature gate. It will be on beta level support, so feel free to use it, and it should work well. And we have refactored Kubeadm internally to provide the necessary extension points in order to make Kubeadm adoption much easier. So if you want to just use the certificate generation feature of Kubeadm, you can use that. You can exec that, and by this new Kubeadm face command, you can basically use Kubeadm as a toolbox and integrate it with the rest of your system, whatever it might be. We hope it will be used in the major deployments like Gkey and these different, as an alternative to like Kuba in the end. And we've graduated Bootstrap tokens, the feature that lets us join a node with just one token to beta. And we've started a Kubeadm adoption working group, which is meeting bi-weekly, and we're trying to consolidate and unify the different deployments there, and yeah, basically reduce sprawl in our community.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean that's the high-level points.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lucas. And moving on to the next agenda item, G. Rodriguez. Are you in the...
Garrett had to drop off, so I'll be giving his update since this is part of the 1.8 release effort.
Okay.
So there's a PR linked in the notes that talks about something we worked through during the contributor experience SIG meeting. And essentially trying to find a mechanism where SIGs can acknowledge an issue as being in the milestone, the 1.8 milestone. And this allows us to get much better, clear signal about what is or isn't a relevant issue for the release. Because as it stands now, technically, somebody could assign a SIG to an issue, and they don't necessarily, the SIG doesn't have a formal way to acknowledge that that is their ownership or that they've got it. So that approved for milestone label is a key way that is tracked and allows us to know that it's being actively worked or that it needs to be kicked out of the issues around the milestone. So Maru Newbie has been working on some of the Prow plugin automation. So that plus this PR means that SIG leads have the capability to add that label. And hopefully that will make things easier so we can delegate more. Any questions about that before we move on to 1.8? Cool. So 1.8.0 Alpha 3 was cut last night. Unfortunately, despite a lot of heroic efforts by everybody to try and get test passing, we were not able to get clear signal. So the beta is out there, is good, but there are possibly some defects in it. The real win there was that the release team was able to cut the end-to-end release, and huge thanks to Mehdi Baloul, who did the actual release cutting. He filled in while our release branch manager was out. So thanks again for that. There was this triggered an issue in GKE, which was because a couple of different endpoints were not enabled. So Mike Denise stepped in and took care of that this morning. I believe that is in place, but that was causing a lot of failing tests, and I believe those are probably green now. Code freeze is September 1st, and we're going to shoot for the beta release on September 6th. And it is critical that we have green tests at that point. Hopefully a lot of the work that was done yesterday to get set up for the alpha will make that a little easier, but we will be haranguing, pestering, annoying people with not passing tests to try and get this in a good place so we can get a solid beta and look for more updates on that. And we still need a lot of release notes in the draft. There's a lot of SIGs that have not checked in changes to the release note draft. There is a checkbox in the actual draft, so if you add your stuff there, please make sure it gets, you check off your SIG from the list. It could be that maybe you've already added them and just not check off your particular SIG as well. So if you put those PRs in, I will take care of merging them and or somebody else from SIG release. And we'll get that draft off to our amazing document team. And that will also feed into other activities, Swarna, like your helping coordinate marketing activities with SIG PM. So again, the draft is a great starting point, and we will go from there. Another thing that we need to start doing, and the sooner we get on this, the better, is that there's all the serial tests. As you know, or hopefully know, those are not run as part of the merge process. So what tends to happen is those tests tend to get a little bit dodgy over time because they're not getting regular attention, because they're not getting visibility during the merge process. But when it comes time to do the final release cut, those will all need to be green. So if you are aware of those serial tests that might have a failure, please take a look at those as soon as possible so we can start work on that so they don't come up and bite us later. Sooner is always better. Looks like there was a question from Zig Scale, which I assume is Bob Wise.
Yes, it is. Just a clarification. Are you saying that without passing the test suite, we're jumping from the alpha stage to the beta stage?
That is correct. There is enough testing. All the tests that are being applied right now in release master blocking now happen against the alpha. So we will catch regressions or other things that are in the alpha as it stands. So it's just not, we can't, it's about a level of assurance, I guess is really what it comes down to. That unless we have solid green tests on the alpha, we can't assure that it stands solid as it is. So hopefully the signal will untangle as we move forward. I'm sure Aaron can probably speak to that as well, since he's been down this road a few times. Yeah, so the goal is to get green signal.
The goal is now to get green signal in the beta. We're moving past alpha.
Moving past alpha. So I don't think we're going to cut another alpha, but that may change.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If there are no more questions for Jace, we will move on to. Oh, sorry, Jace. Did you have anything else, or did anyone have anything on 175 or 169? No. Right?
I haven't heard anything about 175. I'm sure Wojtek can put something in there if need be. And Anthony cut 169 yesterday. And again, thanks again, Anthony, for your service as the patch manager for 1.6. It's like the job that never ends. So
got it.
That's
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to call out something about 169. The main reason we cut 169 was for an issue with stateful set. So if you use stateful set, please go and look at those release notes. And the issue is that if you're starting on something before 169 and you go upgrade to 1.7, you could experience problems with stateful set. So please take a look at the release notes. And we're also going to be addressing this with additional mitigation in 1.7.5. So if you're going to upgrade at any time, the safest path would be to go to 1.6.9 first, then go to at least 1.7.5 or beyond 1.7.5. And we'll be sending an announcement about this once we finalize the plan for 1.7.5.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Anthony. If there are no more questions, we will move on to the SIG updates. Rob, are you on the line?
Get off mute.
Perfect.
So Cluster Ops has been relatively idle. We are supposed to have a presentation today, but by Ray Cox, although he might be called away into some other urgent issues. So in classic ops style, we need to line up operators to do presentations. We had a couple over the summer that were really good. We were looking for somebody to help lead a dialogue about node admission and the pattern for that. So the Kube API configuration and node admission pattern. I keep trying to find the time to pull that together, and so that's a background task for us. But it's been pretty quiet. So we are always looking for operators who want to talk about what their decision process is, what they're doing, and we have very lively discussions around operator use cases and what's going on. So that's the update for Cluster Ops. And Jason, who is normally our co-chair, is a little tied up with release activities. So if somebody wants to step forward and help be interim co-chair, I'm happy to have additional leadership. So I think Jason wants to settle back with that.
Okay. Well, if anyone is interested, you know who to contact. Moving on to the next SIG update. Eric?
One last
Sorry. Rob?
I was just going to say, we have our meetings are, our meetings are Thursdays every other week. So we're having a meeting this afternoon at 1 p.m. Pacific, if you want to join it. I'll put the link in the notes.
Perfect, thank you. All right. If Eric is on the call for any SIG Auth updates.
Eric is having some internet issues. If we can swing around and get him back when he's online, that might be best.
Okay. Okay. Any other SIG leaders on the call before we move on to the next line item in the agenda? Unless there's anything pressing, we will move on to the next one. Okay, Brian, thank you very much for taking time today to help us kind of get a quick overview on the steering committee elections and the steering committee voting process. Brian?
Yeah. So everybody should have seen the announcements about the steering committee election. They're posted to every SIG group, Kubernetes dev, all Slack channels, and Twitter. Just to give a recap, currently we're still accepting nominations. Nominations close September 8th. So if there are any more nominations, please send them out by then. The nominations need to have members of standing from at least 3 different organizations or companies endorse that nomination, saying, yes, I believe this person is a reasonable candidate. The candidates themselves do not need to have standing, but if they do, they count as one of the 3. We have over 20 nominees or candidates already. I think we have a panel of very good candidates to choose from. But if there are any others that you want to nominate, please get those in. We are going to be asking the candidates to write up some short statements so we can put together like a voter guide so people can know more about the candidates. Although hopefully these candidates would be people that members of standing who've been involved in the Kubernetes community up to now would already know something about their participation and contribution in the community. The vote, in order to vote, even if you're already a designated member of standing, you do need to register. So in the emails, we sent out a link to a form that you need to fill out. You need to have your email address in particular, or you won't be able to use the voting mechanism. If you think you should be a member of standing, but you weren't or you're not sure, use the same link to request a member of standing and just send us a short justification for why you think you should be a member of standing. And we're trying to be pretty liberal. If you've said PRs, if you've participated in SIGs, if you've helped with releases, If you contributed to documentation, whatever it is, if we can find evidence of your participation in the community, we'll most likely say yes. That voter registration deadline is September 13th. So you have a little bit more time for that. The election will begin on September 19th. So we'll be using CIVS, Condorsed Voting. We'll send out all the details when it gets closer to the election, and we'll send out the link when the election actually starts. The election will remain open until October 3rd. So you'll have a chance to get your vote in. We'll be counting one unique vote per registered email address for members of standing. So that's why we need that. Previously, when we used this mechanism, we did it per IP address, and that caused a bunch of problems, especially people voting behind corporate proxies and things like that. We have a few people helping to coordinate. If you do have any questions, do send those questions out to Kubernetes Dev or to George or Caleb for helping out with election logistics. And I think that's mostly relevant. Are there any questions now about how the election is going to work? I guess I did also want to say, in terms of what the job is, I did send out some notes about that in the original thread on Kubernetes Dev. If you saw that, about what we expect the role to actually be. The steering committee or the Bootstrap committee discussed a number of issues that we want to address, and we put together the steering committee charter and the election process. But really, most of the hard work of fleshing out the governance for how the Kubernetes project should work, how it should be organized, how decisions should be made, reconciling long-standing issues like closing the gap between how we organize people in terms of SIGs and how we organize code in terms of owners, those kinds of issues. All that hard work is ahead of us. So I expect for the initial set of people elected for the 1 and 2 year terms, a lot of the time will be spent fleshing out those details, writing documents, communicating it to the organization, responding to issues that come up as we roll out these new processes and policies, and so on. The one key role of the steering committee is going to be to make the final decision about which subgroup is responsible for what. So, technical issues that come up or escalations that arise as we develop an escalation process, that's one of the things we'll need to develop, will be to decide whether a particular topic should be owned by a particular SIG or whether we need a new SIG, or if an issue comes up, which SIG or SIG should try to resolve that problem, things like that. The steering committee itself is not going to be making those technical decisions. So people who think that that's what the steering committee is, that is not what the steering committee is going to be. Those decisions may get decided by SIG node or SIG network or SIG architecture or whatever the appropriate technical subgroup is. Yeah, okay. But I think that's it. Are there questions from the chat?
So I asked one, Brian, a number of my guys have said that there's no feedback that the registration was accepted, or if they made an exception, like for member of standing, whether that was accepted or not. Will that change, or just you click send, shut up?
That is a good point. Confirmation. I'll look into that. I know we have done a few rounds. So in general, most of the requests for members of standing have been pretty obvious. There are a few people who provided no justification, no GitHub ID, things like that, where we couldn't even tell who those people were. So if we had enough contact information to reach back to them, then we did and asked for clarification. We have so far not sent confirmation for everyone we said yes to, but that is a fair point. People should be able to know whether they were correctly registered. So we'll see if we can do that.
So I have a question, not in chat. It seems like there are some organizations in the spreadsheet here that have enough candidates that not all of those candidates can join the steering committee without going through a threshold of too many people from one organization on the steering committee.
Correct.
Planning on addressing that situation.
The top, the person, so we're going to be using condorcet voting. So the people with the top votes from that organization will get in, and when they hit their limit, no more from that organization will be voted on seats. I believe also we decided that the people with the top votes will get 2-year terms, and the people after that will get the 1-year terms. So in general, we're going to end up with a stack rank, and we'll fill slots from the steering committee as appropriate from that stack rank.
And can you remind me what the limit is?
It is 1/3 of the steering committee.
So 1/3 of 13 is 4.
Correct.
Okay, so no more than 4 people from a single company or organization.
That is correct. So in particular, from Google, we have 3 members of the Bootstrap committee. So only 1 more Googler can be elected.
Any other questions for Brian? Thank you, George, for posting a bunch of links on the chat and also in the meeting notes, Chase. If there are any other questions, feel free to reach out to reply to the original thread that Tim had started on the election process or the nomination process, or even directly to Grant if you have any, Brian, if you have any other questions. I see Eric is back on the line.
Hi.
All right. Eric, quick update on your side.
Yeah, so I'll be giving an update on SIG Auth today. These aren't necessarily release notes for Auth, but are just sort of items that we have been working on or are sort of been seen through. The first one is the quick update, and I've linked my notes in the actual notes if people want to follow along. So the first big update is the Container Identity Working Group. This is not an effort by SIG Auth per se, but is a working group that combines members of SIG Auth and a few other SIGs in the community to try to sort of help improve the ability for us to get sensitive data to workloads. There has been 1 meeting so far, and will be another meeting tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So please go and look at that if you would like to join that effort. The TLDR is trying to get some form of better identity, stronger credentials for pod than, say, a service account, to allow it to talk to some external secret store to negotiate, I would like this particular secret, or I would like these particular credentials, and allow that external secret store to have a strong idea of where that request is coming from. The next big item is that RBAC is going to be graduating to 1.0. This has been pretty extensively tested and been in beta for a few releases now, and it's also seen additional tester use through OpenShift, which adopted it much earlier. It will be promoted to V1, and with actually no API changes from V1 to 1 as of today. With this release, we are formally deprecating the alpha API group during the 1.8 cycle, so that will eventually be removed at a later stage. Part of the next item is the TLS client certificate rotation. So in 1.7, code was introduced into the kubelet to allow it to request and renew a certificate for TLS. What that means is that we hope, so this plays into a much larger feature, which we call TLS bootstrapping, which is the ability for nodes to come online, or potentially even other components, and request a TLS cert from Kubernetes. So they send a CSR, and Kubernetes approves it, or not, and returns credentials to the node or some other agent in the system. This has been used to great effect in Kubeadm to expedite the process of having nodes join with actually unique identity. That will be moving to beta. The rotation aspect of that and the kubelet continuing to renew its client cert will move to beta as part of 1.8. Another item that was alpha in 1.7 and will be moving to beta in 1.8 is the advanced audit logging features. So currently, beyond this feature, the existing audit log format is just a simple file on disk for the API server. What this effort around advanced audit has been is to sort of formalize what the structure of that format is. So for instance, we are now spitting that file out in JSON for other systems to come along and formally parse. Additionally, it adds a webhook. So the idea is that if you're running a highly available system with multiple API servers, that they can all send their audit logs to a common place, and somebody can create a UI to present those or set up alerts based off of that. Another item is the rules review API. This is an API for users to try to determine what actions they can perform. This is incredibly useful for building UIs, and OpenShift saw a lot of use in this for building their own dashboard. So what it will allow UIs to do is when a user logs into a dashboard, the UI will be able to say, hey, can I, what can this user do? What can I show this user? What should I gray out? Can this person, view this resource, but not edit it, for instance? And we hope that this will help also inform users just very quickly and give a good sense of what they can do in the system. A final item that I'd like to bring up here is some work around the encryption of secrets at rest, and specifically around key management services. So this is an alpha feature in 1.7. As a quick word of warning, this feature probably may or may not get into 1.8, but I'd like to bring it up here because it's probably of interest to a lot of users. Specifically, it allows you to use external systems to provide the keys or encryption mechanisms for secrets. So this isn't necessarily talking about the secrets API, but as secrets are ingested by the API server and go into etcd, they will be encrypted by some external system. So in 1.7, you can provide your own set of keys to do this encryption. And there are 2 pull requests and design proposals out to one at a Google Cloud KMS implementation, and another one is a Vault-based implementation, which would allow you to either the Google Cloud KMS or Vault to actually do encryption of your secrets before they go into etcd, and prevent you from having, or the administrator from having to statically provision a bunch of secrets. So that was a lot of items, but that's my update for now. If there are any questions, happy to take them.
Any questions for Eric? Going once, twice, gone. Oh,
One.
sorry.
One quick question. The Vault and Google KMS integration, will it be built in core or out of core using an extension?
These are currently proposed as in-core implementations. You wouldn't, they're not exposed to the user in particular ways, but yeah, they're currently compiled in.
Okay. Do we have any, is it going to be, I'm just thinking about when we're trying to move out cloud providers, it seems counterproductive to build more things in the core.
Yeah, I think one of the main motivations was to have multiple implementations of this KMS stuff. I also don't know what good interfaces KMS provides. For instance, a lot of our authentication sort of builds specifications, and I don't know what good ones around there are. I haven't worked on that specifically, so I'm probably not the best person to ask, but I'm sure if you followed up on the issue, then people would be happy to come.
Yeah, I'll look into it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Eric. In the last 10 minutes, George, over to you for a quick update on the office hours.
Yeah, we had great turnout for the office hours. We'd have 50 people show up to the live stream, which was really great. And I'd like to thank all the volunteers that showed up to make it happen. We're going to go ahead and continue to do it on a regular basis once we shake out some of the technical kinks. I've linked a video to it below, and hope to see everyone there. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think we've covered everything in the agenda, and we are still 10 minutes or almost 9 minutes within the hour. Unless anyone else has anything to add or any questions, any further or more additional questions on the steering committee process for Brian while he's still here, we can probably call this early.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all. Thursday.